Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Page One podcast, where we dive deep behind the cover of entrepreneurship and try to uncover the what's and whys behind a business's success and the people in the business. Today, I'd like to welcome Kurt to the podcast from Stringam LLC. Kurt has an extensive background in law, private commercial real estate investment. He was the president and board chair of economic development in Lethbridge. Kurt is doing all that and more. He also supports a number of charitable causes. Man, Kurt, I'm really excited to have you today. Is there something that you don't do?
I'm excited to be here to answer your question. Probably sleep I could use more of on any given day, but otherwise there's not a lot that I don't do.
That's awesome. You're clearly a very experienced lawyer in the country, various achievements and recognitions to your name. I'm sure the journey was not as easy as it all seems, the glitz and the glam. What was the one thing that always kept you going?
The mindset that you should never give up, right? I think that people and younger generations, as they're finding their way, I believe struggle with this a lot, that it isn't easy to be successful and to get where you envision yourself going. And sometimes it feels a lot easier to just throw your hands up and give up. And I think a lot of people do that in any number of contexts, but in my profession, it happens quite frequently. We have a high attrition rate for sure, because it isn't for everyone. Once they get into it and realize, how difficult practicing law, especially in private practice, can be, they walk away without. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think if they just stuck it out a little bit longer, they would hit their stride and find the confidence they need and start building to where they can then continue on and feel a lot more grounded. So I just always took the position that I knew where I wanted to be generally, and I wasn't prepared to give up without a big fight. And I haven't given up on anything major yet. So here we are.
It's awesome. Well, that's how you ended up here, right? Trying something new. If you were to pick a factor that led to Stringham's success, what would that be?
Innovation, creativity, appetite for risk, preparedness to think outside the box, especially in our profession, which is not necessarily known for that.
Oh, that's a great answer. Growth strategy seems to involve a blend of organic expansion and strategic mergers and acquisitions, right? How do you evaluate potential acquisition targets and ensure that they kind of align with your strategic objectives?
A few different ways. So we look, everything starts with the people and the fit. So our culture is really important to us, and that includes our core values, which we've adopted as a firm and directly hold ourselves accountable to. This is a new development in the sense of, when I took on this role at the beginning of last year, we actually started trying to define what our culture is and what our core values are, so that we can then start living them, because we all kind of knew what it was, but it hadn't been committed to writing, right? And to words and actions. And so we first look for that. And I think if you don't have people that fit within the broader, firm culture, you're going to have a tough time with them, because what we do is so people driven, right? It's a people driven services industry. We don't manufacture widgets or sell some other product. It is people working together to deliver a service to other people. So you really have to have that fit and that mesh. And if the people on the inside are, to be clear, some collision and some conflict is healthy in my opinion, and as is diversity. If you're too homogenous, you're not going to have the diversity of thought and perspective that leads to the best strategy and the best outcomes, both for your business and for your clients, right? So ultimately, we start with looking at how do the people we're interested in approach it. Then we look at the communities, because we really care about our communities. We choose to be part of them. We don't believe in just being there and taking from the communities. We view ourselves as partners, and we look for relationships and alignments. So we look at that as well. And then, of course, the next step, if we overcome those two things, is to look at the money side of it, the financial side. Does it make sense for us? Is it a solid business when we've seen behind the curtain that there are a solid practice that they're operating? And is there an upside for us to join forces? Often there is, right? And the big part of the value proposition for us is looking for those fits to then move forward together with and turn what we're currently doing into something greater than it already is.
Yeah. I like that answer, because oftentimes when you think of it, it's like, okay, like how much money are they making? What's the profit margin? Okay, great. Good business fit. Awesome. But there's so much more to it than just the money side, right? And you kind of went over a lot of those aspects. Risk management, a crucial aspect of any business strategy. Can you provide some insight into how you assess and mitigate risk while pursuing growth?
Yeah. So we look at a whole number of things, and actually our firm is, because we are still in an evolving state, right? We're shifting now into a really corporate structure and growth driven model, but we've come from, being a smaller firm and smaller firms in smaller communities joining forces together. So we're still developing some of those pieces, but we recognize that we need to actually develop a formal enterprise risk management structure, which is in process. So, at this point, we don't have a formal, say, ERM dashboard that you might see in some, the really big organizations, but we're moving towards that. In the meantime, we look at, risk from a brand and reputation perspective, because that is huge. So if you don't have a good reputation as a lawyer or a law firm, there can really be no greater damage to you, because that will spread like wildfire and you'll lose business as a result of it. So we start there. And then risk from an M&A perspective comes back to your earlier question of, if there's not a fit and this merger falls apart because of it, that's why I start there. It's really because of the risk, the underlying risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest one, is if the people don't fit. You have this great shiny announcement that you're moving forward together, and it turns out you're not actually working together and it spins apart. You are better off not doing it in the first place. And often that. In your gut if you are skilled and experienced in this area or not. And sometimes people push too hard because they see the value proposition on the financial side, but fail to look at, actually, there's a huge risk if this doesn't work out and the people pull apart.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, risk, standard things. Are we making prudent financial decisions, right? Are we keeping an eye on our revenue and expenses and how they interplay? Are we planning strategically for that? Are we investing in the growth model we say we want to have? And that takes infrastructure to support, right? So all of those types of decisions. And then, from everything from how we balance our physical space to IT. IT is another huge area of risk nowadays. So we've done a lot of enhancements there to ensure, greater protection as we grow and become a bigger target. And then physical space, we've done the analysis from, do we want to be owners or do we want to be tenants? And currently we have a mix of both, although typically we tend to own our major spaces. So the office I'm sitting in currently that you see behind you is our Lethbridge office, which is not the first office that our firm has owned, but it's the first that we built from scratch. We designed, we built and built tailored to our needs and have owned it. We've been in this space for 10 years now, very successfully. And we've done a similar project in our Medicine Hat office and currently building the Grand Prairie region right now, looking to move into our new office there later this year.
That's awesome. It's exciting. Congratulations.
It makes it makes a fun little side branch of the business. And it's a great investment, or has turned out to be a great investment for us to this point. But it's fun to get into the elements of the design and other things that some of us are into, and our owners are able to participate in to the extent they're interested in doing. We don't force them to, but if you want to have input, here's the meeting, come show up. Let's talk about the colors, right? If not, I'm going to pick them for you and you can't complain later.
Fair enough. For our listeners, can you give us an idea of the size of the team that you're working with?
Yeah. So a total of about 100 people in the firm currently. We vary, people come and go, obviously, especially nowadays, more so than we've ever seen. But lawyers and student count hovers in and around 50. That's about to change because we have some mergers that are coming online soon. One has been announced in our Swift Current region in southeastern Saskatchewan. Another that I can't tell you about yet, but it'll be announced soon. It's going. So, but the current footprint is about that. And within that, so 50-ish lawyers. And currently we have 18 partners. So there is, of which I am one. And then we have an executive complement as well. And then the rest of the team is support staff in various capacities, from legal assistant, paralegals to supporting our finance and tech functions.
Cool. Was there a point that you saw exponential growth at, where it was okay, it's getting uncomfortable, it's moving really quick? When did that all happen? Because to get it to 100 people, it doesn't happen overnight.
I don't think there was ever. I think there were some people who felt that heartburn. I was never one of them, because I was always wanting to do what we're doing now a lot faster than how we did it.
Yeah.
But it was necessary for us to make some changes structurally internally to facilitate that, because what we were running into is too many smart, talented lawyers who have strong opinions trying to weigh into every decision on the management side of the business, which is a really important side of the business. What would end up happening is it wasn't always essential. There wasn't always a value add. As much as you want to engage everyone and get input, sometimes it can become a distraction. And then we would have people bogged down in minor decisions, taking them away from where they really need to be, which is practicing law, serving the clients, doing what we do, right? So I'm glad we were able to get to that point and facilitate me to now go forward with the vision that I've kind of realized in the last a couple of years, and especially since last January when I formally became CEO of the firm under our new structure, I think we probably will start seeing some of that exponential growth, because what's interesting is people are hearing about our story organically and approaching us without us even trying to reach them. And that's great to see, because it means that our reputation is solid. People are hearing about us and want to be part of it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, too many cooks in the kitchen, as the saying says, right?
For sure. Yeah.
The saying goes.
And so just to clarify that, what we've done now is, myself, I have broad authority over operational decisions for the firm and for our holding corporation that owns the real estate that I was mentioning earlier. I have an executive team that reports to me that handles all different parts of that, from marketing to finance to IT to the people side of things. And then there's a board that I'm accountable to as CEO for they oversee the strategies, pieces of the firm, policy development, and so on, that give me and my team the parameters in which to do our work. So it works well in the sense of, accountability to the owners is built in, right? So the partners elect the board, who then, oversees the management function from a governance perspective, and then appoint someone like me to do what I do and select my team to do what we do. So there's checks and balances built within, where people engagement, access to information. It's just that it's not all everyone in the same conversation at real time at once, having to vote and agree on every decision.
No, that makes sense. I have I kind of found something cool about you. Lethbridge's top 40 under 40. Tell me about that. I'm sure, getting that recognition. How did getting that recognition influence your approach and leadership?
Yeah, that was a minute ago. It was a while ago that I was under 40. I guess not that long ago, but it was a while. It was good. I was really honored by the recognition. I mean, that was a fairly new program that they had done at the time. I was in the first cohort of people who received it. And so it was a cool recognition. At the time, I had been kind of emerging as a community leader, had been chairing the Board of Economic Development at that point, and had moved up into part of our evolution as a firm. We created, my prior role was as what we call regional managing partner. So I had management operational oversight for the region that I was in. And then we were all part of what we call the management committee, which was formed from those in our roles, plus our managing partner, who had a certain scope of authority around management decisions for the whole firm. A different version of what we have now, a lot less robust, a lot less authority than I now have. And so I view it as kind of part of the necessary evolution to get where we were now. But I had emerged up into that role as somebody, at that point I was probably about 35, so still relatively young to be successful in private practice doing what I was doing. Have those other roles and then be, selected, because those were elected roles. So my partners at the time elected me to take on that role and lead this region, which was at that point our almost brand new building and our biggest office, and so a lot of responsibility. So I think those things all kind of played, and then people on the selection committee would have had the opportunity to work with me. Lethbridge is a smaller center, so we would have had collisions in professional contexts or board work or other things. And the economic development was a good one in the sense of we had, made up of a huge cross section of the community deliberately. So I got to meet all sorts of great people, from business to, the academic institutions and everything in between. Right now we're about 120,000
population,
somewhere in there. It's actually the third biggest city in Alberta. Quite a bit of a difference between Calgary and Edmonton and Lethbridge, obviously, but we are at one point, Red Deer was a larger center than us, but we've ticked ahead of them in population over the last couple of years and are now the third largest. And then within that, there's a greater service area. The city services about 300 or so that the city draws in from smaller outlying communities.
I have a question, but I'll say it's separate from this. I'll save it for later. But you support a lot of charitable causes, particularly in the realm of education and inclusivity. What drives your commitment to support all those? And give us a little bit of a background on that.
I think it comes back to practicing what I preach. I mentioned earlier that our firm believes in being part of the communities we're in, contributing, giving back in the ways we can. And that's any number of things, from giving your time, which for lawyers is a commodity, right? And if you have the means to do it, to give money. I've always done a combination of both. And I tried to align myself with certain things that were areas of interest for me. So it started with smaller community organizations, the business redevelopment zone, community foundation. Economic development was a bigger one. And then that kind of evolved into the role that I had as chair of the board of governors at the university, which I did for 6 years, which was a massive job of commitment, but an incredible transformational experience that I think, has culminated in a number of things since. And frankly, I think really helped me in this role that I have now with our firm to have that other perspective from governance. And that also actually kind of motivated me to obtain my ICD designation and learn even more about corporate governance and to bring that skill set to the role, because it was a big job, right? We're talking about a $1 billion prize that has a $2 million operating budget and 3,000 employees and, closer to 2,000, but still a lot, right? And a lot of moving parts and political pieces. And it was pretty incredible. So that was really transformational. But all the way along, education's been really important to me. And so I learned through the course of that work that the university had a matching campaign, finishing a matching campaign where they would match funds donors provided for student scholarships and bursaries. And so essentially you double the impact of your gift. And it's something that I've been thinking about my partner and I have been thinking about for years, doing something. We just didn't know quite what that was going to be. Was it going to be, a gift via our estate one day? Was it going to be something different? And then we got thinking about this campaign and realized, no, we want to have an impact, first of all, while we're still living, so we can see that and actually take part in it and feel good about what we've done. And secondly, we wanted to help people like us. So, we both grew up as LGBTQ plus people in small town Southern Alberta and rural ag backgrounds, and went, part of who we are, like, we're proud of those backgrounds. They gave us a lot. We both come from really loving, supportive families, which not everyone say, right? But we also, there's something about growing up in that background that gives you grit that other people don't necessarily have. And also, but we recognize that come with barriers and that our experience isn't the same as everyone. And in fact, quite the opposite. And people like us have really struggled to get beyond those circumstances. And we both recognize, and I say this very openly, my life now, as it is, not possible without my education. And we both feel very strongly about that. And the U of L for both of us it was the foundation for everything else, right? I couldn't have gone on to law school to become, the business person that I am today without those educational pieces. And I'm grateful, very grateful for the legal education too, but the U of L was the start, getting me out of my small town, getting me thinking differently about everything, exposing me to collisions with people with different backgrounds than me, diversity of perspective and thought, right? And then eventually helping me become comfortable in my own skin and moving forward with that evolution. So we looked at it and said, we both feel the same way. Like, without that experience, we could not be where we are today. So we want to be able to help somebody else who may not have the same background as we do, supportive family, or just, other economic barriers, etc. So to help get them, to help lift them out of those circumstances, we decided to create our fund, which establishes 3 different awards within it. The first one is directed at high school students in entrance. So those kids from the small towns or who have other economic barriers. It's not a requirement, by the way, that they be from a small town. It's just a factor that's identified in the application process. But that's who we had our eye closely on, is kids who otherwise, for any number of reasons, that need to hand up to actually get into university. So the first award, the largest, is directed at them. The second is directed at academic achievement, because we believe in that, right? You can't just show up. You still have to do the work and you have to achieve. And those that do, we want to reward, especially if they come from that background and then are asserting themselves. So it's focused on that segment. And then the third is about allyship for existing students. It can be either undergraduate or graduate students who are demonstrating strong allyship for the community. And there's an award that they're eligible for as well. So it's split between the 3.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I can see why you don't sleep.
Yeah, especially over the last couple of years.
Keeps you busy. Yeah, no kidding. I did a little bit of research. So the property side, it's called Paul Edwards. Is that correct? Paul Edwards Properties?
My partner's personal, it's corporate, but our real estate portfolio, yes.
Yeah. Okay. It seems like it's seen some pretty impressive growth. Can you share some of the aspects of your growth strategy so some of the listeners can learn that are looking to hop into property?
Yeah, absolutely. It has grown. We've been pretty strategic, I would say, not risk averse, but also not cowboys in our approach. We've been cautious, but we've been able to kind of look at where's the right risk and where are the right opportunities. So from when we acquired the initial piece of the portfolio in 2022, actually already by 20, because we haven't had dramatic growth since then. There's just been too much going on. Interest rates, for example, have in that window, we've more than tripled the size and value of the portfolio just through our own efforts of looking at what are the opportunities and making big moves. We were fortunate enough to be in a position to do a major acquisition at the beginning and acquire an existing portfolio with quite a few properties that we recognized had an upside. They were not mismanaged by any sense. We managed, and we were then able to dig in and really somehow find the time and energy, because we were both working full time at the time, to do that work, to look at how do we strengthen what we have and add more value, and then how do we use that to then turn around and acquire more. And then other opportunities just sort of came to us through the great partnerships we have with people in the community, including a commercial realtor we work with, friend and colleague who has done great work for us. So we will identify a prospect, we'll look into it. And there's been plenty that we haven't pursued, right? We'll explore a conversation or make an offer and pull out of it further in as we get into it and realize it's not quite right for any number of reasons. But the ones that we've gone ahead with, we've been quite happy with. So it's really about just being patient and being deliberate, and are you growing for the sake of growing? And the other thing I would say, advice I would give, is don't take on too much too soon, because there's a lot of mismanaged properties out there from people who have done that. There's sort of two segments that I've come into in this space, which is people who've fallen into properties because, say, for example, their families left it to them. It's been in the family for years or generations. They really had to do anything to manage it. It's just been there and they've taken it for granted, and then they haven't managed it properly, and they've let it get to a point where the value has declined or the value that it could have isn't there. That's where I like to be. I like to identify those properties and then acquire them and then turn them to what they can be, right? Yeah. So there's that segment. And then there's a segment who are, younger and more ambitious, but who've taken on too much and they're not managing them properly, not for lack of interest, but more bandwidth or capacity. And so they're not, say, attracting the best tenants or strong leases or best rates. They're just kind of getting by. That doesn't position you for growth. It takes a lot of effort to manage these properties. It's humorous to me that the government treats them as passive income because they're anything but. It takes a lot of work on top of lots of different things, especially in the residential space. There's more ongoing things with tenants that are happening constantly in real time. The commercial space, typically less so, but what ends up happening is it seems like everything happens all at once, right? So you'll have a big part of your portfolio where the leases are coming up for a renewal or renegotiation or something, and suddenly you're dealing with multiple tenants all at once in real time. And then you'll have a month fairly quiet. And then you'll have a month where, you've got a big deal that's fallen into your lap, and you're, putting all your spare time into the diligence around that. And a few other things like that happen. But what's worked out well for us is because my partner, as I mentioned, acquired the portfolio. We were both working. He's a former executive. I've always been with the firm that I'm with full-time, super full-time. But we were just 22. We moved him out of his prior role and fully into our portfolio. So his full-time gig is managing that, and he takes care of all of the finance back end and more of the tenant relations. Previously, that was more me. And now it's nice because I can get involved at a higher level, help him out, strategize, give my input and guidance, and then he has the bandwidth to actually do execute those pieces, right? And then keep on top of the finances, which is where he always was strong. So it's a good fit. Good compliment for us. And so far, we've successfully been able to manage it entirely ourselves. So we have a third party assist us with the residential properties because that's too much to do on our own. So we contract some of the management out of those, but everything else we handle ourselves. A third party. The only person we pay other than ourselves to do work for us is our realtor for finding us deals and our bookkeeper and accountant for helping us with some of those basics.
Do you mind if I ask you how many doors you guys manage?
My screen just did something weird. Sorry. No, we have 75 doors. Yeah.
And that's split between commercial and residential?
Yeah, about 2/3, 1/3. So 24 residential doors. The rest is commercial.
Any, challenges especially in the commercial real estate market? I feel like there are a lot of challenges present in today's economic climate, right? With COVID, everyone coming back, now slowly coming back to it. What was that like for you?
COVID was interesting because, of course, none of us knew what the heck was going to happen at the beginning of it, right? So we had a deal lined up that we signed off off on actually right before the pandemic was declared and things were starting to get really weird. We were gone. We were out of the country on vacation, actually, right in the height of that. So that was interesting. We literally got home the day before they closed all the borders and had to quarantine. So we were in Palm Springs wandering around going, the hell is happening and why is there nothing on all the store shelves? And so we had signed off on this deal before that, and we're getting into diligence, and we came back, and even though we liked the property, we just kind of went like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen with any of this. So we ended up pulling out of that deal, and it ended up selling later on in that year. I think what we saw was sort of some short-term blips with people, certainty of what was happening with businesses. Certain businesses were hit harder and struggled more. Really, I think what COVID did was really shake out the weaker businesses and let the stronger ones emerge. So those that were already on shaky ground, just, they couldn't make it go. Or they did for a while, but on artificial means, the loans and other funding that was pushed out there, it really just delayed the inevitable for them. But of course, what happened was everyone else had some of that uncertainty as well. So we had a period where we had some vacancies and, it was harder to lease out space, on the commercial side, because I think everyone was sort of cautious. And remember, the interest rate climate was interesting then too, right? It was quite a bit lower. So what we were seeing was those reasonably strong businesses were like, why wouldn't I just own my own property, right? And there's a lot of people who think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
It isn't always for every business, but there was a ton of people looking to buy, right? And so the properties that we would typically invest in were either very competitive because somebody was also looking to buy as an owner-occupied space, and then also that meant for us less opportunity to lease out. So we were looking at it going, well, I'm not really interested if I'm going to buy it and sit on a vacancy for 6 months to a year while we try to find somebody, because everyone else is trying to buy their own space. All the great tenants are trying to buy their own space. So that put a bit of a chilling effect in, but we've always had really solid tenants for the most part. So it was, I would say, relatively minor. Then what ended up happening is, some of those other smaller businesses started to fail and so on. And then interest rates went bananas, like literally double in the course of a year, right? So that had a really interesting chilling effect on those people that now are no longer in that position. So then suddenly it's done, and there's hot demand for a lot of our property. Like we have almost no vacancy in our entire portfolio, which is great, but it was a weird sort of this, then that. And now we'll see what happens. The rates are supposed to trend down a bit, but I don't think it's going to be a while before they trend down to the space where there'll be lots and lots of buyers out there. I think we'll still be in a competitive space, like a good competitive for us for a while, where we have the property that people are interested in leasing. And as those rates tick down, it's great for us because, our margin improves if the interest rates go down, depending where you're at, right? Because that's another question that people like in our business need to ask themselves. Do you take the risk of the floating rate? Typically, I would have always said, the weird stuff I just went through over the last 3 years, I would say, I don't know, I might be more inclined to a lock product if the rate is reasonable and attractive. Then at least I have certainty, right? I know what my margin is. Because the one thing that is often overlooked in commercial real estate especially is you can't be really nimble in the sense of, so if you're doing any third-party financing, banks want solid leases, right? They want to see your properties occupied with solid leases with strong rent revenue. If you do that and you lock in at a rental rate for 3 to 5 years, you can't just change the rent if your expenses go up, right? So you have to try to balance those two. What's happening on either? What are the pressures on either side? Expense, revenue. You can do things like build in escalations and plan for some of that, but certainly it was, at the beginning of COVID, not possible for us to anticipate what was going to happen, and it's ended up being a good thing, and that our rates have gone up because of that competition I was talking about. So that's great, but I don't know is there another shoe that's going to drop at some point? And by then, will we have not been able to position ourselves quickly enough? Is it going to continue to get more competitive and I'm leaving money on the table? Or is it, by the time we get through current leases, our rate's going to go down again? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to go down anytime soon with inflation and all the other things. So it'll probably be more of a sustained, slower increase. So I hope for everyone's sake, actually, not just my own, that that's the case, because the roller coaster we've been on is just too tough for everyone, from just your everyday citizen who works 9 to 5 and has employment income, costs skyrocketing for the necessaries of life. It's really, really tough for business people, especially small businesses, to navigate all of that. When they fail, we all suffer. Small businesses contribute a lot to the communities they're in multitudes of ways. We don't all just want giant, massive corporations as our only option. I think that, we will regret it if we end up in that space.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Do you guys have an exit strategy or also like a 5-year, 10-year goal in terms of what you want to accomplish, how many doors you want to manage, how big you want to get? Because look, like you're going to have to sleep eventually, right? And like truly, like eventually life is going to catch up and you're going to have to slow
eventually
down.
I'm
We all know
going to
that
be old
happens.
and tired.
Yeah.
We do have
In other words, yes.
we do have a bit of a plan. One thing we are good at is being flexible in our planning. So we are prepared to kind of move as things change and evolve. We never are too rigid in our planning. But at this point, we don't have to do anything different than we're already doing. It's a great business that we've grown it to a great size. Generating as far as generation of revenue, as far as asset base for us for the future, for whoever we choose to leave our estate to someday, they'll be in good shape if we make no changes. But we're also very interested in, especially me, I'm a growth driven, love to make deals kind of guy. So, I'm going to continue to look for that. And if there's an opportunity, we'll take it. And I would say probably if I got out my crystal ball, I would say we'll grow a bit more before we contract. And then the decision will be at that point in time, are we ready to start divesting of the assets? And then we'll do that strategically. Or if not, and we don't want to actively manage it anymore, do we hand it off to a manager and then just, go sign ourselves somewhere and collect our cut of the revenue? That would also be okay. But I'm also not so naive to believe that there won't still be work involved. As I said, it's not really passive. Even with the manager, you have to manage the manager. So that's okay. But I think that's probably a good balance of, I know myself reasonably well. Gifts of age is that self-awareness. I'm not very good at sitting around being idle doing nothing. And I'm not very good at not using my brain. So I'm going to want to be, even if I slow it down, which I think I'll have to at some point, I'm going to want to be doing something that interests me, that stimulates me.
Yeah. I don't, you don't seem like the type to just go retire in Palm Springs.
That's not going to cut it for me, but I do want to be able to do that. So the real thing that I want to do is have the ability to have more time and more free time to do those things and spend time together and with family and all of that, which is definitely, the non-glamorous side of success that people don't talk about is those impacts, right? There's only so many hours in the day, and who ends up making the greatest sacrifice typically are those closest to you, because something has to give. And, you may be with them physically, but if you're dialed into your work or something else or distracted, they're the ones who feel that. So I believe in balance and trying to find it where you can. Not always good at practicing what I preach there, but it is really important. And our goal as a family is to get to the point where we can actually breathe and spend that quality time together and not have any other distractions or interruptions. If there's something we choose to and want to focus in, then we do that and we do it well, but it isn't 24/7 around us, constantly pulling you in those directions. It's a deliberate choice or enjoyment. I think if I get there, I'll be pretty happy. Yeah, exactly.
It's a pursuit of it.
Means to an end.
Yeah, exactly. Any books or podcasts or resources that you find have significantly impacted your day-to-day life and your leadership journey?
There's a few. I wish I had more time, actually, because I really enjoy them. The problem that I find is I can't just sit down and listen to a podcast because I'll fall asleep. It's too mellow for me. So I have to do it either when I'm driving or moving around in some way. So probably one of the most influential people that I listened to years ago who resonated with me, and I still follow him and listen to his content, is Simon Sinek. He's a really interesting guy. He has some great, his whole why, start with why, and some of his other books and talks. He gives some great TED Talks. Really, really interesting. He resonated with me early on. And then I follow just some really cool entrepreneurs, right? Like Arlene Dickinson on the Canadian side is someone who I found really interesting for a long time. And not just because she was on TV, but just because I think she's her background is really impressive. I'm always impressed by people who have pulled themselves up from nothing and made something of themselves, and also, made a point of supporting other people who want to, make it themselves and are prepared to put in the work. They're not handing anything to anyone, but they're going to help people succeed and pass on some of their knowledge. And then I would say most recently, I've really been enjoying Brene Brown's work. She talks a lot about, her work is all largely about vulnerability. And there's some really cool key teachings when you listen to her work. One of my favorites is her book called Daring Greatly. Talks about how and if you get a chance in heaven, she has a TED talk that she did that's on Netflix that's fabulous. It really gives you a flavor. She's
Okay.
a great delivery, great speaker, and her audiobooks are great. But she talks of the concepts of lots of different concepts, but it's all largely around vulnerability and how you can't necessarily be successful or overly creative without making yourself vulnerable. And that's a hard thing for some people. So vulnerability comes in lots of different forms. But if you're so afraid to fail that you never take the chance, you're not likely to succeed to the level that some people envision, right? And I don't think there's any one measure of success. And I don't think that people who achieve less than others are failures in any sense, right? I think success needs to be a relative term. You need to define it for yourselves. I think it needs to be rooted in happiness. To me, somebody who lives a very frugal existence and is happy, they're winning, man. Good for them, right?
100%.
Any of them. Whereas, you get in this space where I exist with all the type A's and they're like, go and you've got to make more and have more and show off more than others. That isn't necessarily a road to happiness at all. And so, you have to.
But it's sold to us as the
you have to
road
really
happiness,
watch
right?
it. But I think it's all about like whatever you define as your goal and what you think is your path to happiness, you've got to try and you've got to take some risk and you're probably going to fall down and you're going to need to get up and dust yourself off, but you can't get there otherwise. And the one line that she said that it was like, wow, something like vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, right? You can't, and creativity, you have to get into those really creative spaces. You have to open up. You have to be willing to share ideas that someone else might think is stupid and be told that and talk through that and get over your ego and all the rest of those things, right? But I've really, really enjoyed her work in all of those respects.
I'm gonna check that Netflix series out. But yeah, Simon Sinek is someone that I've listened to for a while and really enjoy as well. So thanks for sharing that. Last question. Reflecting on the insights that we shared today, what are some key takeaways that you would like our listeners to leave with today and some advice that you would give them, whether it's law, real estate?
I think I would say, just to try to translate my experience into some deliverables that you might want to think about is if you want to be in the legal profession, and you should want to be, it's a great profession. Certainly it's a great degree to obtain. You will never regret having a law degree. I believe strongly, whether you actually end up in private practice like me or any of the other number of possibilities, a law degree is powerful. It's knowledge, insight into so many things that you would otherwise not know. If you want, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, I won't. But if you don't,
you're allowed to.
It's a don't fuck with me degree, right? So it gives you that context of really understanding your rights as a citizen and what you can do and what someone cannot do to you. I think it really helped me ground myself and be able to move forward and really gain comfort and strength in who I am and growth. Because I grew up as a pretty shy kid, right? I was struggling with my own identity, what that all meant. And I'm a natural introvert, but to be able to be like, no, I have this knowledge and I'm not going to be treated this way and I'm going to stand up for myself. It ties into all of that. To be able to then turn that into, I'm going to look out for someone else. So if you're that type of person, who really thrives on justice and I want to help somebody who needs my help and I can translate my skill and knowledge into that, it can be extremely rewarding. And so I think it's great for that. And it's translatable into so many things, right? Like my business experience wouldn't be where I am now, wouldn't be possible without the law degree either. And the experience I've had as a lawyer and a business owner, because I was able to translate pieces of that into what I've been doing. I can draft an agreement. I can put together a deal. I can negotiate things that I've learned on the job, right? That others would have to hire somebody else to do for them. Yeah. And so that's been really great. And so I would say you can't go wrong even if you don't end up as an actual practicing lawyer with that type of a degree. And then from there, if you want to get into private practice, do it. Try it. Don't give up right away. Because it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to dig in. People are going to be mean to you along the way, right? It's an adversarial based system that we're dealing in, right? Even if we're doing transactional work, it's still adversarial. But if you're doing litigation, you're ending up in court, somebody's going to come at you and it's going to feel really like, whoa, you can't take it personally. Like you'll have to work through all of those things. But if you can get through that, it can be really, really fun, exciting work and very rewarding in the sense of you can really help people and you can earn a good living while you do it. But the most important thing about that is think about the business side. That was one of the things that I did you do not get out of law school, right? You get the theoretical knowledge, and it's very theoretical. Most of your instructors, professors are academics. They bring in some people as sessional lecturers who are actually, lawyers out in real life, but it's very much conceptual, driven, not a lot of practical skill translated. I think some of the schools are trying to do better there, as like advocacy, teaching you how to be in court. There's some of that now, which is good to see, but there's very little about business and law. Practice of law is fundamentally a business, and that you need some help with, or you need to get your head around it. What does that look like? Like, how do I grow a practice? One way is to just show up and do good work and work hard and get other people to get your name, pass your name around. That'll happen organically, but you can accelerate that with some strategy. How do I market myself? And what do I want to do, right? What kind of area do I want to be in? As much as it's important to focus on that, also don't pigeonhole yourself, because just like picking a major in school, you're probably going to change that. I did high conflict family law for many years. That was not my choice out of law school, right? It just evolved into that, and I ended up being good at it and for the most part enjoying it. And so it worked. But there's all sorts of things that'll come. So keep an open mind, be prepared to shift and roll with it a bit, to think about the business and then grow with that and see if it works for you. If not, you have other opportunities that you can pursue. The other piece I would say is get in your community. Find a way to contribute in a meaningful way, because you will find it rewarding. I don't care what it is. Do you like dogs? Go volunteer at an animal shelter. You're into healthcare. There's plenty of opportunities there. Education like me, find something. Do something, give back, contribute, even in a small way. And I'm not talking money, because when you're starting out, you aren't going to have any, right? Like you're paying loans, you're doing all the rest of it. Contribute in some other way that you can, that adds value to the other party and that you feel is rewarding. And then, keep an eye open for opportunities. But remember, you don't have to say yes to every opportunity. You can't, and you shouldn't. And it's okay to say no. I just don't have bandwidth for that right now. I'm tired. I'm burned out. I don't want to sit on a third board. I have a busy professional life. It's okay to say no. So find the things that you're most interested in, exciting about, and the success will build from there. And the third piece of advice I would say is diversify. Diversify. And I mean diversity in every context, right? Surround yourself with people different than you, get their perspectives. It gives you, the data is out there, right? You get better product, you get way better results and satisfaction from working with a more diverse group of people. DEI isn't just a bunch of hooey, it is legit. So there's that. Diversify in your environment, the people you're working with if you can. The other thing is in your businesses and in your life, don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's a reason that I diversified into real estate, but it's not where I have all of my wealth, right? I have other areas as well. I similarly would never put all of it into the stock market, but I have some in both. And there's other things, we're always looking for things and interesting opportunities. And as you do well there, more opportunities will reveal themselves to you, and work within your risk tolerance. It's okay to be risk averse. It's okay to be a cowboy, but just make sure you're aligning when you're prepared for what the consequences of that may be. If you're risk averse, you're not going to see some of the dramatic upside, and that's okay if that works for you. If you're more risk tolerant and you roll the dice, well, it might not go your way, and you better be prepared to lose what you're throwing out, right? So you work through those pieces, because in law, there's going to be lots that reveal themselves to you, because you collide with so many different types of professionals and business people, and you'll have these opportunities. And it's a great way to just add some interest, but also to not have all your eggs in one basket, because, hey, you may decide you hate it one day. And I see an awful lot of lawyers who are stuck in the profession that they no longer enjoy because they didn't build it. They're miserable because they don't have they feel like they don't have any other option. And it can create a bit of a golden handcuff scenario, right? For the most part, if you're reasonably competent, you can make a decent living as a lawyer. It's pretty hard to walk away from that and go do something else where you're making way less money, because then you're going to feel like a failure and all the other emotional roller coaster that'll happen. So I think it's a really good idea to look at building out something else around you that take you in another direction when you're ready, when that time comes.
Those are
my pleasure.
Some great advice. Thanks, Kurt. That's all. That's all I have for you today. So I just wanted to thank you for your time. To our listeners, thank you so much for listening and joining in. And we'll be sharing this across all of our platforms on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and all the other ones as well. Thanks again.